So we're really, really glad that you guys are spending an hour with us today, and you're going to be really, really glad that you did, because trade show season is upon us once again, and it's one of the most expensive things that we do in the year, and also one of the most profitable things that we can do for our companies. So today we are talking about 3 ways to make your next trade show your most profitable ever. Hopefully you've been able to print the handouts and write down your questions and things like that. There are about 4 places in this webinar that we're going to be taking questions. So, if you can write them down, you can actually type them into the chat window at any time, and we will kind of moderate those. John will moderate those for us and keep us on track so we don't get too far off the beaten path or too far behind. So go ahead and close all of your other windows. Make sure you have a pen. Make sure your cell phone's turned off. And multitasking is highly overrated, isn't it, John?
It is here.
That's for sure. All right. So this webinar is for you if you sell something. So if you don't sell something, you're probably not going to find this a good use of your time. If you are in aviation or related industry, most of what we talk about has to do with business to business. And has to do with fairly large, complex transactions and other kinds of things.
Well, you need to back up. If you sell something, that means sell something in aviation.
Exactly.
Other salespeople, not so much.
Exactly. And if you plan to exhibit at a trade show or a convention this year, I think most of us, that's true of. If we're in aviation and we're in sales, we are probably going to a trade show this year, right?
Yes.
Either as an exhibitor or at least as an attendee. And if you hate trade shows, if you love trade shows and you are already really, really good at them, then this may not be the best use of your time. But most of us, we have a love-hate relationship with trade shows, don't we, John?
Well, necessary evils, I think, is the term most people use.
Yeah, I actually really like being able to see, all of our clients in person and other things like that. But they are a lot of work, and they're exhausting, and they are amazingly easy to spend more money than you thought you were going to, right?
Very expensive and with no ROI unless you do some pre-planning and think things through.
Exactly. This webinar is also not for you if you are looking for the easy button. If you think that there is some software or some shiny object that's going to make your life easy when it comes to trade shows, then I'm not going to lie to you. There is no way to do them well without a lot of work being involved, right?
No, there's not.
Right. Okay, so if you're looking for the easy button, look elsewhere. There are a lot of people who will sell you a piece of software and tell you that this will take all the work out of it. And in some cases, it will take some of the work out of it. And we'll be talking about some of those things as we go through here, ways to make different parts of the process easier, but the whole thing really is, if you really care about your customers and you really care about making sales, then you really are going to have to put some work into it, and there's really not an alternative for that. So what are we going to cover today? 3 ways to make your next trade show your best ever. Number 1, of course, is getting people to your booth. We're going to call that booth bait. We might actually get a trademark on that term because because that's one of the things that is kind of a nice shorthand for the way people tend to work in trade shows. Sometimes they have booth bait, sometimes they have bad booth bait, sometimes they have no booth bait at all, meaning that there is no reason for people to visit your booth. So we'll talk about that. Follow-up that actually works. A lot of people bite off more than they can chew when it comes to follow-up, and then they end up not doing it because they're overwhelmed with other work by the time they get back to their office. And follow-up that is not done is not going to be effective, right?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, and then number 3, connecting with existing customers. And this is something that has been the best return on investment for us and for a lot of our customers. And it's often overlooked in trade shows. All right, so if you do this right, you will have a measurable return on investment for your show, and you will be excited for the next one. Maybe not entirely thrilled, but you will know that you can do it. And, that's a really, really good feeling when you have accomplished a great trade show, you have a positive ROI. Not many people in aviation can say that they did that and that they measured their results and they measured the dollars that they spent and they came out ahead. And, they.
Well, that's true, just not about just aviation, but in other professions as well, because we've done trade shows for other than aviation before we got into it, and it's just messy.
Exactly. So there's some similarities and some differences, but that's a similarity. Almost every industry, they have difficulty measuring their return on investment, and they have a really hard time making their money back because they spend so much on trade shows, right?
It's extremely expensive, but then again, customer acquisition is.
Right. So we have a few new people. I'm Paula Williams.
And I was just taking a sip of coffee. I'm John Williams.
I was waiting for you to do that. And we are ABCI, and ABCI's mission
is to help everybody in the aviation industry to sell more products and services.
Absolutely. So we are, like I said, we're really glad to meet you. We came from several other industries, including education, finance, and other things. This was the first trade show that we did in aviation, and yes, that is Aaron Tippin holding the cards. And our magician, I like to call him our magician, our staff magician, Diamond Jim Davis, went with us to the show, and we did just about everything wrong. Well, that's not necessarily true. We did a lot of things that would have been right if this had not been aviation. We had lots of products to sell. We had, I think, a great booth. We had very engaging graphics. We had Diamond Jim bringing people to the booth like nobody's business. We had lines of people, waiting to see Diamond Jim. We had lots and lots of leads that came in. But there were also a lot of things that we did wrong. And the first one is we spent too much money for the point that we were at in our company and everything else. We had purchased what they call a short throw projector that you can see in the back. Excuse me.
And now you're sipping coffee.
Frog in my throat, and I just drank some of John's coffee, which is really bizarre because he has no sugar in it. So anyway, we had hired a salesperson and we had hired a magician, both of whom we had to pay room and board for and travel costs and everything else. We brought a whole bunch of furniture from home, trying to save money and so on. For the booth, we brought a little bookcase and put all of our products in there. We did a nice job of displaying
a pickup truck load full of stuff.
A pickup load truck, exactly. And if you've ever been to one of these aviation trade shows, this is not how it's done. They have the semi trucks and they've got the Freeman guys, and the forklifts running around, and we've got our little pickup truck, in amongst all those semi trucks. But the point is, we were trying to make sales at this trade show, and we thought that we would be able to because we had in other industries. We had some educational products that we were selling. We had a Facebook module for aviation marketing, a bunch of other things that we had printed and bound and had ready to go and everything else, and we thought these were going to be flying off the shelves like hotcakes. What we learned was that, number one, at that time, and this was 2006.
Yes, I think.
Okay. In 2006, nobody in aviation wanted to hear about Facebook. We were way ahead of our time. The second thing was that nobody at aviation trade shows is prepared to make a purchase that day. And the third thing is that we had spent entirely too much money for the environment and for where we were in our company at that time. So we got lots of leads, and it ended up being a success in the sense that it was a great jumpstart for our company, but it was a failure in the sense that we didn't make a positive ROI. In fact, we went way in the red for that show, but we made lots of friends and had a lot of fun.
And we also learned a lot of things, and subsequent trade shows, we reversed that completely.
Exactly. So
we're trying to help you not go through that learning process.
Exactly. And so our motto is no random acts of marketing. And what we had done was really not random because it was stuff that would have worked in any other industry. Well, maybe not any other industry, but in most of the other industries that we have have worked in. So that's where we're coming from. We're going to be sharing a lot of things that we've learned over the last 10 years, and we're going to be basically giving you some step-by-step information on how you can improve on our flaming failure, right?
Well, I'm not sure it was flaming, but it was just smoking.
It was smoking. All right, so questions so far?
How do you choose, excuse me, how do you choose the right trade shows?
Okay, Fred, thank you for the question. There is a pretty good page on that in our trade show checklist. Hopefully you've downloaded that from our website. If you haven't, it's at abci1.com/trade shows. That's Alpha Bravo Charlie India #1.com/trade shows. If you don't already have that, I'd highly recommend downloading it. The short answer is you look at the attendees, attendee list from either this year or last year, and look for your top 10 most wanted customers and your top 10 competitors. If they are there, then you should be there too. If they are not there, or if very few of them are there, then it's probably a show that you could skip.
And this is not just something you do over lunchtime. There are in excess of 265 trade shows in aviation the last time we counted.
Yeah, probably more than that.
Every year.
Right, exactly. So it is getting more difficult to cover the field, if we want to call it that. So you really do need to be more selective in terms of the shows that you pick. And that would be the short answer of how you do that. Look at an attendee list, find your most wanted customers, find your competitors.
And then how much does it cost to exhibit at a trade show?
Andy, thank you for that question. John, you can answer that better than I could.
Well, it depends. Let's pick, let's see, NBAA. Last time I checked, for a 10 by 10 was $2,900 or $3,200. I don't know. It's right in there somewhere. It depends on some things that I don't recall. But that space does not come with internet, power, carpet, a chair, a desk, a table, actually, or even a trash can.
That's true. Actually, I think it comes with just the table in front and the curtain in back, and that's all you get.
Yeah, the curtain in back is there, and you may have one table, but I don't know that it has anything but a paper covering.
Right, and that's a 10 by 10 square foot booth. Yes. That's the smallest that they offer. So, yeah, and then you figure you're going to have travel costs for your team. You're going to have entertaining. You're going to take some people to lunch or dinner. You're going to have to probably buy internet, electricity, all of those other things from the show, which are obscenely expensive, right?
Yes, and on top of that, when you get there, when your stuff gets there, you can't put it together. They have people to do that.
Well, you can put your own booth together, but
after the stuff gets to where your booth space is.
Exactly. So you end up paying, freight costs and delivery costs and things like that, even if you brought your own stuff.
Do they charge more based on location of the booth?
I don't know. I do know there are some booths that you can get at a premium either because they do it by lottery. So if you start earlier, you get a better positioning of your booth. For others, you can pay a premium for things like a premium placement, things like that.
And on top of that, one of the reasons you start out early is because you need to take a look at the map of the layout, and they have that online along with everything else. And you need to know, preferably if you've been there before, then you already know what the traffic flow is, because some of those booths just don't get traffic flow unless the attendees are very vigorous in attending everything. Some of them, everybody has to go past regardless whether they want to or not. And if you can get one of those, that's the best way.
Exactly. Okay, let's see.
And then last question so far.
Yeah.
Does anyone make a positive ROI from a trade show?
All right, Andy, thank you for that question also. Yes. In fact, depending on the product or service that you sell, we have brokers, that bring one aircraft to one of these events to put it on in the static display and either sell that aircraft or sell another one while they're there and meeting people and so on. So, Yes, they do, and sometimes it's with one transaction. They pay for their entire cost of the show. Um, so yes, it is possible. It depends on how you count it. So, if you say from the opening to the closing day of the show, no, nobody makes a positive ROI. If you call it from the opening day of the show to 3 months later, 90 days later, then I would say it's possible but unlikely. If you call it from the opening day of the show to 6 months later, then you should be making a positive ROI if you've done your job right.
And that presupposes you've done all the planning that we're talking about, and starting about 6 months in advance, all the way up through and including the trade show and so forth and follow-up.
Right. So you can spend time or you can spend money, and we highly recommend spending less money and more time, right?
Unless you got the money.
Yeah, unless you got the money. That's true. Well, and even if you do, you could do 1,000 times better with a little bit more time. A lot of people just don't put enough effort into these trade shows for the amount of money that they're spending.
True.
Okay, cool. So you've all, hopefully, if you've been to any of ABCI's events, you've seen our phase 1 is prospecting, phase 2 is building credibility and closing, and phase 3 is post-sale activities, getting testimonials, referrals, resells, and recaptures. So phase 1, prospecting, this is a diagram of what your plan should look like. Basically, you have some kind of a call to action that hinges on that trade show, and then you should have a number of advertising activities, and those are those blue arrows that lead up to that call to action, right? So in this case, we have search engine optimization. Maybe there is a hashtag for the trade show or some keywords for that trade show that you can include in your blog or on your website, indicating that you're going to be there. You can advertise on social media that you're planning to be there. You can send postcards as invitations to your list, and hopefully you do have an in-house list of folks that are interested in your product or service, or you can purchase a list from JetNet, AirPack, any of those kinds of things to send postcards to. You can do magazine advertisements, especially if it's a show that's being put on by the magazine. In a lot of cases, you can get a deal. If you're renting a booth, you can negotiate for advertising for that booth. So make sure you keep that in mind if it's one of the Aviation Pros shows, or let's see, what was the other? The MRO Network. Sometimes they do package deals where you can purchase, you can rent a booth, and then you can also purchase an advertising package at a discount, or have that as part of your.
At MBAA, they have actually a press room as well.
That's true. Exactly. And then emails you can send to your own list using your mail service, or you can also use Aviation Broadcast or other services that do send to aviation-related folks if you've got a fairly broad shotgun that your product or service would be useful for. And also referrals from current customers. You can include in your planning, how can you provide an incentive for your existing customers to bring someone to your booth. We've seen that done very, very effectively as a way to get people at your booth. And then, of course, the yellow box, the product demo at the trade show, right? It could be a product demo, it could be a mini consultation, it could be a trivia quiz, it could be a contest, it could be any number of things, and we're going to be talking about those kinds of things and how to put those together in just a minute. And then, of course, there's some other activities after that, but to start with, we're going to talk about this first bit, right?
Everything I don't know about it in just a minute, but shortly anyway.
Okay. All right. So we good so far?
Well, I think so. I don't see anything saying not to continue. So.
All right. So there are a lot of things that are good about this ad. This is a magazine ad for Sporties, which is one of our favorites, and I'm going to pick on them just because they're big enough that they can take it. There are a lot of things that are good about this ad. So it shows a map of Oshkosh, shows where they are, has a nice little pointer there, their booth number. All of those things are wonderful. It's visually attractive. All of that is great. What is not so great about this ad? If you can type it into the chat window if you know what they could have done better with this ad? Okay, we're getting a couple of responses, which is good. There's no call to action. Why should I visit them? To quote Catherine from a conversation I had with her yesterday, Catherine Crady, the WIIFM, what's in it for me? I have a lot of things that I could do at Oshkosh, right? There's a lot of things to do, a lot of places to go, a lot of things to see. Why would I spend time going to Sporty's booth when I can just, pick up their catalog and buy from them anytime? They really do need to include on the ad, or at least, maybe as a subsequent to this ad, maybe they did. I actually just pulled this one off the internet because I needed an example. But, if there is more to this ad and maybe some text that goes along with it or something like that, you really do need to give people a reason to spend their time, because if you've ever been to one of these things, they are literally sometimes a three-ring circus. They have literally marching bands and all kinds of things that are designed to distract people and get their attention away from you. So unless you are also spending a lot of time and effort getting people to your booth, they are just going to either walk by on their way to somewhere else, or they are not going to show up at all because they have no reason for the traffic pattern to take them by where you are.
Exactly.
Okay. So why should I come to your booth? Here are several ideas. All of these have been used by us or by clients very successfully at one time or another. The classic is a product demo. If you have a physical product like a de-icing machine that John spent probably 20 minutes playing with, and not that we have any need for a de-icing machine.
Which is a problem.
But you had a good time with that, didn't you?
They actually had the real thing in there, and you could actually sit in it and move it around. Obviously you couldn't shoot any of the liquid out, but it was quite informative.
Right. They actually had it set up as kind of a video game so that you could see how much of the wing you had covered, if you left any spots untreated and all of that. So product demos are great if you have a physical product, or even if you don't have a physical product. There's sometimes ways that you can metaphorize your product into a physical example.
Well, what was an interesting one was Honda.
Mm-hmm.
And Honda Jet was, stage center, and of course they spend hundreds of thousands there, but they had their robot out there bouncing around, talking to people and performing in front of the jet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was really fun. Mini consultations are really good because you can set those up as appointments ahead of time. So if you're doing insurance or legal or anything that is something where people are going to have questions, you can set up half-hour consultations or something like that where you can tell them to fill out a form, and then you can give them some advice, some small dose of very specific advice or consultation in a short amount of time. And that's a really good way to stack your booth, just have consultations scheduled back to back to back, and that way you get to shake a lot of hands, meet a lot of people, and provide samples of your service, right? Trivia quiz, that is a really good one, and I need to mention all of these things we're going to go into a lot more detail next week in our members-only webinar. So that webinar is going to be completely about booth bait and different ways of creating and using booth bait, and how to incorporate that into your sales process and all of those things, how to pick the right one and how to do it correctly. So a trivia quiz is always good. We prefer that to drawings, which we also have on here as our least favorite. A trivia quiz is a variation of that where you give people a little order form and they can fill it out, where they have to know something about your product or service, or they have to listen to a sales presentation in order to get the answers, or they have to have read your book or something like that in order to get the answers. And it has to be easy, but it has to show that they have enough of an interest that it separates the qualified from the merely I want to win the prize kind of people, right?
Right.
Okay. Entertainment, magicians, performers, comedians, things like that. I think those are way underused, at least by the small companies at the trade shows.
The first time we did that was with an IT company at a very large information technology seminar, and we had a magician. Diamond Jim was there. Our first time to use him, actually. And it was more people going to that booth than any other booth in the entire show. And people asked us what in the world we were doing.
Right, and at that time we were, the product that we were selling was information assurance, which is like a super yawner. It was not something that is really sexy compared to a lot of the other IT products, and actually that was a defense
the DoD, yeah.
Yeah, DoD convention or DoD heavy convention. So all of these contractors had all of these shiny objects and things that explode and all of these wonderful things. And here we are selling information assurance. So we had to do something to get people interested. And what he did were simple card tricks and other kinds of sleight of hand things in front of the booth that would get people to listen long enough to ask questions. And he incorporated information assurance and a lot of the concepts of information assurance into the tricks that he did. And same thing with marketing when he worked with us at that other trade show. So you want to make sure if you do entertainment that it ties in to your product or service. Otherwise, people may remember, oh, there was a really fantastic magician there, but I don't remember who he was with. So you need to make sure that you have that set up as a really great tie-in so that they lead them into your sales process instead of just getting their attention and leaving it there. Treasure hunts and passports. That is a really good way of, especially if you have lots of people at the show that are your vendors or your suppliers or other people that combine with you really well. You can have people check off sections of a passport or do a treasure hunt in a way that ensures that they visit all 4 or all 5 of your booths. And that's a really good collaborative marketing project that gets people involved and makes sure that they do what you want them to do and that they're qualified and motivated before you send them a prize, right? Least favorite, drawing, right? Drop your card in a fishbowl and win a prize.
I go around to all those because they always have an iPad or a set of golf clubs, and I just drop the card in and walk away.
Right. Have you ever won anything?
No.
No, but you do it anyway.
I do it anyway.
And what you're doing is you are adding to the workload of all of those poor salespeople who have to follow up with all those leads.
That's their problem because they're not doing it right.
Exactly. That's true. Okay, so questions on getting people to your booth. I see there are a number of them, which is good.
How far in advance should you begin planning?
Okay. Andy, thank you for that question. Let's see. I'm sorry, Marie, thank you for that question. I'm reading the wrong line. So depending on the show and depending on whether or not, some companies have almost a trade show machine set up because they do a lot of shows, and so they have everything all ready to go and set up, and they can shave some time off of that timeline. But in our checklist, I think we start with the year before the show, where you're visiting the show as an attendee before you spend a lot of money exhibiting, just to see what kinds of things are going on there. So you really can't start too early. I know that doesn't answer your question in a way that you want. You're probably thinking, well, I can pull this together in 6 weeks or whatever. Highly don't recommend it.
If this is your first time and you're thinking about exhibiting, I would, depending on how far, if it's NBAA, well, you might be able to get pulled off, but you need to talk to somebody that's been there before.
Right.
Like us.
Agreed.
But,
okay.
Comment, sounds expensive.
Yeah. That is true. And honestly, one thing that we have found is that people spend a lot of money on trade shows, but they don't spend enough. And let me explain that. They will spend every penny they have to get a bigger booth or to go to one more show or to exhibit at a show that they really can't afford to do well. And what we really recommend is that they go to fewer shows and do them well so that they can do the booth bait the correct way. They can do a good contest. They can do entertainment that really gets people's attention. They can do follow-up that takes some time and money. And you can't do that if you're attending a show every other month and you're a small company, right?
Yes, and most people fail to remember or realize customers are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Acquisition of customers are expensive. They cost money.
Right.
Doesn't matter if it's a trade show, advertising, marketing, whatever you do to acquire customers costs money.
That is true. Customers cost money. And you might say, well, I get referrals. A lot of that happens because of a trade show or something like that, where you get introduced to someone. One of your current customers brings someone to your booth, you shake their hand, they may not have met you otherwise, and you carry on that way, and you say, well, that was a free customer. No, it was not. That was a result of the show. So that counts in your return on investment, right?
Or even a result of a previous sale.
Exactly. Okay.
How do you do a trivia quiz?
Okay, Fred, thank you for that question. You have to have some basic set of information that you need people to know in order to be a good customer for you. And just as an example, the way we did this for Vlog is we created a really, really short, easy, picture-heavy book, the Plane Owner's Guide to Aircraft Logbooks. And the trivia quiz was based on the book. So people could come by and get a free book and then answer the questions, which were on an answer form that was in the book, turn that back in, and then they did a daily drawing for a really nice prize each day. So that's one way to put that together. And again, we're going to go into a lot more detail on that, how to put that together, the steps that you can take next week in our members-only webinar.
That was the last question.
Okay, cool.
So far.
Moving along. All right, so how do you do a trade show? What do you do once you get there? The first thing is rule number 1, there will be no chasing, right?
You never, 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 never chase a customer so that they understand you're chasing them. Exactly.
And you do not want to be the salesperson that everybody kind of walks the long way around your booth to not encounter.
And even if you do, because even if you do get somebody to talk to, the power structure is completely wrong for negotiating.
Exactly. I mean, if you are at a trade show and nobody's coming to your booth, you're already sunk. You've done your job wrong to start with. You should have made a compelling reason, had enough, a really successful booth bait so that people are coming to your booth and you're not having to chase people down in the hallways and other kinds of things. So, yeah, there will be no chasing. People should be coming to your booth if you've done this correctly. If they are not, then you need to rethink your strategy for next year. There are some ways that you can maybe get people interested with a 2 or 3 word question or something like that. If people come by and start looking at your booth, you should be engaged with them and not be buried in your iPad, but you also shouldn't run after them
No.
or anything like that, or try to engage them in conversation longer than they want to be with you. All right, so we want to think of this more like speed dating. If you've set this up correctly, you'll have a succession of people coming to your booth, and what you want to ask yourself is this somebody I want to see again? At least that's the dating question, but in a trade show, it's more along the lines of, is this somebody that I should be spending time trying to sell them our product or service? And we'll talk about some of the ways that you can qualify people, but that's all you're doing. You're not trying to sell.
No, you never try to sell at a trade show. You may make a sale on occasion, and if so, great, but don't plan on it.
Exactly.
In fact, you hear about all the, NABAA as an example, last year, Bell said they sold, 192 aircraft or something. They didn't sell them at the trade show. They were just announced there.
Right.
Even if they consummated contracts there, that was planned for the trade show.
Exactly. That deal had been in the works for months, and they just timed it to coincide with the news cycle of NBAA so they could use their press room and get more publicity for that. Okay, so you've heard of Tinder, right? Swipe right, swipe left.
Yes.
Okay, so basically what you want to think about is just it is okay to disqualify prospects. Not everybody that comes to your booth is going to be a swipe right kind of a person. So, you can, and part of your job at a trade show is to decide, this is not a person that uh, is in a position or has a need or has the resources to purchase our product, which is fine. You should still be friendly to them and enjoy their company and all of those other things, but that is not somebody that you're going to spend time and money following up with. So, 3 questions, and thank you to Norm Ormond for these. This is actually a simplified version of what we used to use, but this is easier to remember, so we're using this one. So do they have the money, the authority, and the need to buy our product this year? Those are the kind of people that you want to be spending time and money following up with. If you can determine that from a quick conversation with them, from their title, from the company that they work for, from the questions that they ask you or answer, if you can determine that any of those things are likely, then you have a swipe right on your hands, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. If any of those is a no, or for sure a no, then you want to swipe left because you want to disqualify. I know this sounds crazy because the typical philosophy going into a trade show is I want as many leads as I can get. I want a big stack of business cards.
Yeah, but that's not true. You want qualified leads.
Exactly. You don't want to be spending money on people that are not going to buy from you. So you need
or
to.
don't have the ability to buy from you.
Exactly. Okay. So what we do is we sort those leads that come in, whether they're business cards or whether they're names that you write down or badges that you scan or however you do that. You want to sort those into qualified or disqualified. And if they're qualified, then you're going to have one follow-up process. If they are disqualified, you are going to have a second follow-up process because, as I think it was Andy mentioned, sometimes people who are not qualified will be qualified later, right?
Or they will pass along information to somebody that may be qualified.
Exactly. So, just because they're not qualified, that doesn't mean you don't give them anything and you don't follow up with them at all.
Right. They still follow up.
Right, exactly. So let me show you how we do that. This is our process. So these are the leads that you acquired by doing your demos or your consultations or your, whatever activity you used as booth bait. Is this person qualified? Yes or no? If they are qualified, you might want to spend $15 sending them an information package, as an example. And we recommend sending that after the show, not handing it to them at the show. Why is that?
Because, well, if you have never been to a trade show, then you don't know, but when you go to trade shows, you get loaded up with all kinds, and they give you a bag for crying out loud that you can put all this stuff into. Well, most of the time you've flown somewhere and you had your bag packed. You don't want to check the bag, so now you can't carry the thing back on with you, and even if you do, it's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of stuff gets dumped in the trash can.
Right, and they think, well, I'm just going to look at their website later, but I'm not going to carry this thing back.
You get home with whatever trinkets you did happen to transport back, and you go back to the house, you get, oh, Dad, can I have that? That looks pretty cool. So you give away some stuff to the kids to play with or take to school. And by the time you get back to the office, whatever you did have gets laid over in a desk in the corner, and you never call these people back.
Yeah, never to be seen again. So, yeah, don't give people an expensive brochure or an expensive book or an expensive information package at the trade show. Send that to them after the fact. So that is your qualified people. And then you also want to follow up with a sales call. And that would be something along the lines of, at the trade show, you asked this question. I've done a little bit more research on that, and here's the answer to your question. So the better notes you take at the trade show of those qualified people, and the fewer of them you have, the better job you can do, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the secret there. If you have a smaller pile, it's going to be a lot easier to spend a little bit more money on that information package and spend a little bit more time following up with them by phone. And you're not going to get them on the phone the first time, right?
Nope.
Okay. If they are not qualified, you're still going to want to put them on your email list because it doesn't matter how many people you email, it costs the same. For most of us, unless we go over some kind of a limit and end up paying a little bit more for our email service.
Well, now there's an interesting.
Yeah.
They just give you a business card. Is it legal to email them?
Yeah, if they gave you a business card at a trade show and you ask them, do you mind if I follow up with you? Of course, they're going to say, go right ahead.
Okay.
You have permission, right? And tell them that you're going to follow up with them. Tell them you're going to send them an email. And, unless they object, then I would take that as permission.
Okay.
Okay. And you may or may not want to make an initial sales call to your unqualified people. If it's somebody that's in a company that you're really interested in, but they're maybe not in a position that would be a decision maker for your product, you may want to follow up with them anyway and just find out what the next steps are to move up the tree to the people who are qualified. So you can make that decision about that last little step there, but you do want to send them an email. We like to send a postcard because they're cheap, and just saying thank you for coming to our booth. Here's our information. If and we would love to have a referral from you if you know of somebody who could use our service. Right? Okay, so you have an expensive process and an inexpensive process for your qualified and your unqualified customers, right?
Yes.
Okay, so secrets for follow-up activities. One secret is that nobody does it. Your competitors are probably not going to do a very good job of follow-up. We've been to a lot of trade shows, and I would say less than 10% of the companies that we visit and that we drop our cards into their fish bowls actually follow up with us. Probably less than 10%, would you say?
Yes, actually.
Right.
Actually, the last trade show we went to was, I don't remember where it was, but in that case, of course, now I was looking at it from a different perspective than you were.
Yeah, you were a buyer at that show.
Yes, and actually, I think 3 out of 4 people actually followed up with me.
Ah, okay. But you actually had these conversations and didn't just drop a card.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't just drop a card. I actually talked to them,
Uh-huh.
explained to them what I was after and why, and
Mhm.
and asked, told them to go ahead and follow up.
Right. Okay, so part of the reason that follow-up doesn't get done is because you have too many people to follow up with. The other part of the reason that follow-up doesn't happen is because you're not prepared. You don't know what to say if you call them. You feel weird about calling them because all you did was a contest and they didn't win, so they're not going to be really happy to hear from you, and you don't want to take the rejection. All of that stuff happens. So what we like to do is create our information packages before the show and have them ready to send, and then we just print mailing labels, stick them on there, ship them out the door the next Monday. Then they're going to get their materials really, really quickly after the show, which is really impressive. It makes it look like you've got your stuff so together. Even though you didn't know, who all you were going to be meeting at the show, you're going to be meeting people, so you can have some information packages ready to send. The second thing is you can use a card zapper. Technology has progressed to the point where you should not be typing these things in and taking 3 weeks to get your spreadsheet straightened out after the show, or your CRM straightened out. We use Infusionsoft, and they have an app called Snap, where you can just take pictures of the business cards, and then it will actually transcribe.
It instantiates the information into Infusionsoft for you. It's really amazing how easy it is and how reliable.
Right. And then you can just print a label and off you go. You can use, if you have an iPhone, there are applications called CamCard or Evernote Hello. If you're an Evernote nerd, you can use those things. I have not used them, so if anybody has some experience with those, or if you have any other tools that you like, go ahead and throw those in the chat window. Or if you don't have a smartphone or aren't comfortable with using an app, you can get a really cheap, like this is $179 at Staples, and I just looked this up on the internet for a card scanner. It's called Card Scan from Staples for $179. The shows offer you these lead capture systems that are thousands of dollars. Don't do that. Number one, I think it's kind of insulting to scan people's badges as they enter your booth. A lot of people don't mind, but to me that feels kind of like livestock, like the, I don't know, like you're checking out somebody at a grocery store and, zapping their barcode. I much prefer things that involve business cards because business cards are still the currency of the realm in the aviation industry. So you can get their business card and still make it easy on yourself by using a card scanner. the last thing is to schedule your time to make those dang calls. That's one thing that very few people do. So what I would suggest is that you're going to be busy when you get back from the show, and you're going to have a million distractions. But if you can take half a day where you are out of the office and you are somewhere else to make those follow-up calls, you can at least leave messages for people, whatever you need to do to get that first chunk of phone work out of the way the day you get back.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah, because the longer you let it go, the more likely it is it's not going to get done.
Exactly. That's crazy. All right, so questions on qualifying people and following up. Just throw those in the chat window.
Or actually, there's a question box.
Or a question box, yeah.
But either way, I look at both.
Good.
Some people who aren't qualified now will be qualified later. That's sort of a comment.
Yeah, Andy mentioned that earlier, and I mentioned that. He's absolutely right. If somebody isn't qualified now, like we get a lot of students that come to our booth and a lot of students that download our materials and other kinds of things. We always put them on our list and send them our newsletters and everything else, because you know what those students do?
They grow up into real life buyers.
They graduate and they get jobs, and then they will remember who treated them like crap while they were a student because they weren't qualified, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
How do you know how many info packages to make before the show?
Good question. That was from Marie. Excellent. We usually make about 100, depending on the show and depending on what the objective was for the show and how busy you think it's going to be and how much advertising you've done. You may have a thought about how many packages to put together. So what we do is we create as many non-perishable supplies as we can. So if we've got some things like we have a testimonial CD that we can have burned, a lot of them, and then if we don't use them all for that show, we'll use them later. So we have big stacks of information or big stacks of documents, CDs, and boxes and so on in our closet. So when we come back, we can drag those out and put them together pretty quickly. And we usually assemble about 100 before a show, send those out, and then we still have materials for the rest.
You need to think it through, too, because one year we did something a little different. We bought, looks like a little key fob, but basically it was a chip with a video screen on it, and the video screen was like 1 inch square.
Yep. And
we put a presentation on it with the idea that we just give them out to people, and then they could use them, they could look at the presentation as sales, obviously, and with contact info, and they could do what they wanted with them. They were, about $6 each?
Right. And I like that because it was about our company, but it was also something cool that they wanted to have, even if they gave it to their kids. At least they hopefully looked at it once. And that's better than a pen or a flash drive or something that they're going to see one time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here's one. What do you think about hospitality suites for clients and prospects?
I think that's an outstanding idea. Again, it depends on the transaction size that you are selling to people and how much it's going to cost you for the hospitality suite. I've seen some mini hospitality suites done in the booth, where they have kind of an upper level and they have coffee and tea and other kinds of things. The nice thing about that is you get a captive audience and you get some of their time where they're going to be exposed to your advertising. So I like those. What I like better, though, is having breakfast or dinner with existing clients and then bringing some prospects into the mix. So if you can have dinner for 8 people, maybe 6 of whom are existing customers or current customers as a kind of a thank you to them, and then bring maybe 2 prospects along on that dinner, the conversation is going to be about you or your product or service, because that's what everybody has in common. And it's a really good way to use social proof, that other people like your product and other kinds of things, and also to thank your current customers and also use that opportunity to, as a sales sales situation. You don't want to be the one to bring up your product or service. You can let your customers do that. You want that whole thing to be a social occasion from your perspective. But it works really, really well.
Yes, it does, and we've done that on occasion, and it's scalable.
Mhm.
We were invited to Bell Helicopter Textron hospitality suite in
Which was
Orlando,
downtown Disney.
which was downtown Disney.
They filled the whole place up. They rented the whole downtown Disney and had a dinner, entertainment, live music, photo ops with Mickey and Minnie, the whole thing. And photo ops, of course, with their new MD 600 Notar.
That's
Fabulous.
not Bell.
Cool.
That
Oh,
was their 407.
The Bell 407. Oh my goodness. I just committed sacrilege.
Yes, you did. Being a longtime helicopter pilot, of course, I had to talk to some of the pilots and got to talk to some of the sales guys and go have our picture taken with a really nice helicopter.
Yep, absolutely. So, but you can do that on a smaller scale with just a dinner for 6 or 8 people.
Which we've done.
Yep, or breakfast for 6 or 8 people. All of those things, and especially if you can introduce people who may be good suppliers or have good relationships with each other after the fact. That's another way to.
Yeah, we've done both breakfast and dinner.
Right.
One more here.
Okay.
When I make follow-up calls, what do I do if I keep getting voicemail and never get through to that person?
This is the bane of the aviation salesperson's existence, right? Voicemail. You're going to get voicemail. So here's a trick that I use that works really well. I leave a voicemail, and you want to have your voicemail scripted, or at least outlined to say, we met at the show, we talked about this, I liked your tie, whatever you can say that's specific about that person, and I'm looking forward to talking with you again about X, Y, and Z. And then you say, I'm also going to send you an email so that you have my contact information. I hate returning voicemails because they always leave their number too fast. I can't get it. A lot of times it'll come across garbled or whatever if they have their contact information in that. So send an email at the same time and use the subject line in your email, just left you a voicemail, right?
And we'll talk more in detail about this.
Yes, we will.
In another seminar.
We need to move on. I'm sorry. I get carried away. All right. So yes, we'll talk about that more. So visit your customers because your competitors will. And we had a situation happen here just a couple of days ago where we had been with one service provider for 15 years, and a salesperson came by and persuaded us to go with them. And it was simply because they came by, they had some new information that we didn't know before, and we switched from one provider to another.
And it was the difference was a few dollars a year. I mean, it was insignificant, actually.
And it was more the service.
Yes.
He went through with a checklist and things like that, and that was a really fantastic sales presentation that he did. But we definitely switched. So understand that your competitors are going to be visiting your current customers, going to their booth and taking pictures and all of that stuff. Okay.
We're getting a few more questions. We'll answer those at the end.
Exactly. All right. So. Checklist. We talked about 3 things that you need to do. First, advertise a reason to come to your booth. Remember booth bait and the WIIFM, what's in it for me? Why should I spend my precious shoe leather coming to your booth? Second thing, qualify or disqualify prospects and follow up accordingly. You want to think Tinder, right? You want to shorten that list of people that you're going to follow up with so that it's only the very qualified that you spend time and money on, and then you have more time and money to spend on the ones that are qualified. Last one, visit your existing customers, and I can't stress that too much. If you even visit an existing customer's booth and then they introduce you to someone, that almost always happens when we visit an existing customer. Mm-hmm. And those are warm referrals. And those are gold, and that is the fastest and easiest way to make a return on investment is a handshake at a client's booth with one of their clients or one of their friends. So I think that's often overlooked. And the only way that you can do that is by spending some time at your client's booth, asking them about their business, how things are going, those kinds of things.
Right.
Okay, so coming up next week, members only, we will work on specific product demos, mini consultations, and contests. For our members, we know your business is a little bit better, so we can get into more detail about what you can and can't do, or what you should and shouldn't do for booth bait, right?
Exactly.
All right. And we have a special offer, and I'm going to go through who this is not for. So if this is not for you, you can go ahead and, we'll see you later. But if this is for you, we'd love to have you stick around, and we'll tell you what we have to offer. This is not for you if you're already an ABCI client or a member of our Insider Circle. This is not for you if $279 a month would take food off your table. We know how that works. We've all been starving students. Our kids are starving students. We know how that works. This is not for you if you are not willing to spend time and energy to get customers. If you think that things should be easy and you should be able to just plug something in and make it work, then you're not ready for this. We need you to spend some time in the real world before you jump in. And this is also not for you if you don't play well with others. And I don't mean that in a bad way. We have some clients who prefer to do private consulting, and that is just fine. But if you are interested in a group that helps each other and is very supportive, this is something that
there's something else you can add to that list.
What's that?
If you think products sell themselves.
If you think products sell themselves, then go try selling for a while and then come back to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or give us the name of your kiosk company.
Exactly. There you go. This webinar is for you if you sell something in aviation, and if you are, of course, in the aviation industry, and if you know that marketing is not magic, right? If those things are true, then we'd love to have you in this group. So, why we built the Insider Circle? Success is about what you know and about who you know. And there are a lot of things that you can do that are going to hurt your reputation before you really know what you're doing. And that's really unfortunate in the aviation industry because we have such a limited audience. We want to make sure that we have kind of a group to lean on where we can run ideas by each other before we spend a lot of time and money and risk our reputation going outside of that group. We want to focus on what's relevant to aviation and not on things that are maybe retail marketing that may not work here. We want to make sure that we don't reinvent hot water, to use a phrase that one of our members uses. I think that's a really good one. If somebody else has already figured out how to do something, then don't be beating your head against the wall trying to figure that out, right? Okay, and we also want to learn one thing at a time and string together in a logical way rather than being hit by a fire hose, which a lot of people feel when they're learning sales and marketing, and there's so much information on the internet, you don't know what's relevant, you don't know what's quality, and what is just kind of snake oil and not really helpful in the aviation industry. So what is included in our Insider Circle is office hours, and this is actually probably the biggest value of the program, is that you get consultation, private consultation, 1 hour a month with John and me. And we will go through your issues, your problems, your projects. A lot of people use us as accountability partners and make us part of their team and have us help with the things that they're trying to do. Projects. We have a collaboration software called Basecamp that we use for each of our members. When you do office hours and things like that, we record it and we save those on Basecamp and with the action items and things like that. So we're very, very organized and help you work through those projects really well. Destinations, this is kind of like charter flights. If you decide you want us to do something for you, you get to sit in the back seat and have us do the flying for you. So if you want a website refresh, a brand refresh, a trade show consultation, or a trade show project management, we can do that for you at a discount in our destination section. We have a book club where we cover one book in great detail each month, and that's a popular sales or marketing book.
The salient points of the book, not
Exactly.
the whole dang thing.
Right, because we know you're busy and you need to keep up with industry-related reading and things like that, but a lot of the stuff that's on the market is either not relevant or is actually counterproductive in our industry, as we found out the hard way sometimes. So this group is a really good group to talk about some of those ideas in our book club, and that's one of my favorite parts of the program. We have a briefing room where we have all of our webinars, tip sheets, recordings, workbooks, and so on. So if you need something, you're trying to put together, let's say, a LinkedIn campaign at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you need to review some materials that you remember having seen, but you don't remember exactly how it works. You can go to the briefing room and get to those any time of the day or night. We have our Hall of Fame, which is where we keep our member highlight interviews. Bert Boda does a really good job of interviewing our members, and that way we can kind of read up about each other, stay up with the news, and these are the smartest people in the aviation industry and really good people to know. So that's a really good way to find out about the other people in the group, and so on. We have our crash and burn department. Not everything is going to come up blue skies and roses, and this is actually a part that's under construction. We're still working on how this is going to work exactly, but we do know we wanted to have a place where people can commiserate when things don't go well, and also share cautionary tales.
And figure out how to make it work.
Of things not to do, exactly. And the last thing is our VIP lounge, which I don't have a slide of, and that's our private Facebook group. A lot of really cool things happen when people collaborate. In fact, we just found out today that 4 of our members are doing a panel discussion at NBAA because of a collaboration that started in that insider circle. So, and it's really, really hard to get in. They get lots of, hundreds of submissions, and out of those, they chose these 4 little companies that probably would not have been chosen by themselves.
Right.
So, those collaborative efforts save a lot of time and money.
I think your guidance probably helped along those lines.
Oh, I think so. But, the nice thing is people get to talk to each other, and that helps a lot. So the outcomes of the Insider Circle is a more robust, predictable, measurable, and stable marketing system each month. You've got a team of people that you can lean on, and this is something that I think is really highly undervalued, especially in sales, because we get so much rejection all the time that it's really important to have that support from other people who are in the same boat. And you might be the only salesperson at your organization, or one of very few. So, if you get to hang out with other salespeople and get to share information and commiserate with each other, I think that helps a lot. It's much less expensive than consulting. ABCI charges $2,000 a day plus travel and expenses when we do private consulting, but when we do the Insider Circle, you get those office hours for a much, much, much discounted rate, and that is private consulting. All right, and then one last thing is if you join by June 17th, you get a $500 gift certificate, and that is good toward any ABCI product or service. And I know some of you just joined recently, and we're going to make sure that you get that as well, so that nobody feels like we're preferring new people or people who haven't joined yet. We like to reward loyalty as well. So join by June 17th, and you get a $500 gift certificate toward any ABCI product or service that you can spend any time during 2016.
Where did you get that $500 note? They don't make those anymore.
Yeah, I know. That's an old one.
Uh-huh.
That's an old picture. It is not legal currency. You'll see it's cut off. So nobody can just print out the slide and cut it out and go spend it. It will be fine. I don't think we're breaking federal law here. Okay. Toward any ABCI service, and you can say, well, what would I spend it on? You can spend it on a marketing flight plan, which is where we do a complete diagnostic of your company, what you're doing well, what we think you could be doing better, and so on. A content marketing system or content marketing program, that's a subscription that we actually just talked with one of our writers about doing a podcast. And what we do is we basically go through putting together an editorial calendar for you of topics that we think would be newsworthy for you. And then we assign those to writers who put together a really great article And these are writers who are, who write for a lot of the aviation publications. So we've got Catherine Creedy and Bert Boda and many others who write for us on a regular basis. And, they'll write an article for you. We have designers who will put together some visuals that you can use in conjunction with those. A social media marketing service, that's pretty much the same thing except shorter. And also we do a lot of consulting on which social media you should be using, and some opportunities to find customers that you may not be taking full advantage of. Search engine optimization services, getting more people to your website. Brand refresh service, if you feel like your brand has been getting stale, needs a little bit of an uplift. Personal branding service, this is a new one, and it's really great for salespeople because people look you up on the internet before they agree to meet with you on I would say, I think it's about an 80% number that will actually look up your LinkedIn profile before they agree to meet with you, and they'll find out a lot of information. You want to make sure that your profile looks really good before they do that. Our website refresh service, if it's been more than 2 or 3 years since you have upgraded the technology in your website, we do recommend that you do that, because things change with the search engine rules and other things. A lot of other people will make, your competitors and other things, styles change. So, you want to make sure that you're refreshing your website on a regular basis so it looks like you're still in business, right? Okay, and additional office hours. So you decide you need another hour for this or that or the other thing. We'll use that gift certificate toward additional office hours. So how you get started is you go to abci1.com/June 2016, and you choose silver or gold, and all of those bonuses will apply to you. And if you're starting with the Insider Circle for the first time, we probably recommend the silver level. You can always move up or down. In the future if you decide that it's not what you need or whatever. So that is available to you. It is risk-free. We have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So we won't honor the gift certificate if you ask for a refund within 30 days because we just can't, we'd be losing more money than we're making. But we do have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you decide it's not for you, that's fine. You haven't lost anything, and there's no long-term contract. Right, so don't wait. Join at the silver level before June 17th, and we will set you up with that $500 gift certificate. If you have joined within the last 3 months, we'll also provide that certificate for you so that you don't regret having waited until June to get in, right? Okay, so we're going to keep answering questions. I know some of you need to get back to work because you planned for an hour for this, but I know some of you still have questions that we haven't answered. So we'll leave that timer on the screen. If you join while the timer is going on, you will also get a buddy pass for the same address. So if there's someone else at your organization that would like to become an Insider's member, we'd love to have them as well, and we'll sign you both up for the price of one, right?
So, yeah, so there's
okay, lots of questions.
Tons of questions.
Okay.
First one is, how do you remember who visited your booth and what exactly they wanted to find out, especially with the number of persons visiting?
Okay. Excellent question. There will be times when you get mobbed, which is great, but in most cases you want to do what you can, and in some cases we have a method where you can have one person who's kind of controlling the mob and another person who's doing a little bit more in-depth conversations. And depending on the number of people that you have staffing your booth, you can handle that pretty easily. So one person is doing triage, basically shaking everyone's hand and saying thank you for coming and sign up for our contest and do all of those things. And if it is somebody who is asking a lot of questions or who seems particularly qualified because of the name on their badge or the company that is listed on their badge, then you want to give that person special treatment and hand them off to a second person in your booth, right? So if I'm doing triage and I run across somebody who is with a company that we would love to work with, then I'm going to grab that person's hand and walk them over to John and say, John, this person is with this company.
Talk to him.
Exactly. And they have questions about X, Y, or Z. And then John can do a better job of, writing notes about that person, taking notes on his iPhone. He may do that, or he may use a notepad, or he may be writing actually on their business card, the questions that they ask.
We go into a lot more depth in this in our members-only webinar.
Exactly. But you want to use a strategy where you're doing triage.
Yes.
Okay.
There are 3 levels of
right, there's 3 levels of the insider circle.
Which should I choose and why?
Okay. Fred, thank you for the question. We do recommend silver to start with, and the reason is because then you've got some room to go either up or down. The other thing about the difference between silver and bronze, because bronze is $79 a month and silver is $279 a month, and you think, wow, I can save $200 a month, right?
Huh.
The difference between the two is that we do office hours for our silver members. And, that's one of the biggest benefits of the Insider Circle is getting that personal attention. We also send packages in the mail to our silver members where you actually get the book of the month with all of the bookmarks for the things that we're going to be talking about. So, there's a lot of things that make that a lot more worth it and a lot more worth your time. Okay.
So what's your next topic?
Okay, the next topic, let me grab our schedule off the wall here. So June obviously is trade shows, we're here. July we're going to be talking about website traffic and how to get more of it. And then in August we're going to talk about qualifying prospects, going into more detail about how to ask the right questions and other kinds of things without upsetting people and so on. So that's the next couple of topics. You can download our syllabus from the webpage, or as you get into it, we'll send you the syllabus so you'll know what topics are coming up next.
And your next topic, and when does this, I don't know, when does what start?
Okay, Alex, thank you for the question. When does this start, meaning the Insider Circle? Good question. It starts whenever you start. So, for example, if you started on today, June 8th, we would send you June's packet with the trade show book that we're reading right now, and then at the end of the month you would get the recordings from this webinar and the members only webinar. You'd get invited to that. So it starts immediately as soon as you sign up.
And how long do I need to stay in the, well, it says class.
The Insider Circle. How long do you need to stay? You don't need to stay. You do need to, we'd love to have you join for at least a month. See if it's for you. If it's not for you, no skin off of our nose. No problem. You can drop out at any time.
And do you have any products that I can buy for the $500 using a gift certificate?
Oh, good question. Okay, you could buy office hours at $249 each. So you could buy 2 office hours as an example.
We have a list of products that's a couple of pages long that run anywhere from, what's the least expensive?
The next least expensive product I think is personal branding, which is $579. So for $79 you could get our personal branding service where we go through your LinkedIn profile. And, with the checklist, we also go through your resume and any other mention of you on the web and give you some advice about how to improve how you show up on the web and so on. So that's a really good service that you could get really cheap with that gift certificate.
And how much time does this Insider Circle take? I guess they mean monthly, weekly, I don't know, doesn't say.
Okay, we recommend, you're going to be spending time on your sales and marketing anyway, so you basically take that time that you should already be spending and make it a little bit more organized. So what we recommend is that you do 3 hours a week if you can, and that's Marketing Monday, Webinar Wednesday, and Follow-Up Friday. So Marketing Monday, you plan your objectives for the week, and do your sales meetings and other kinds of things. You plan your sales calls and so on. Webinar Wednesday, you do what you're doing right now. Learn something new. And then Follow-Up Friday, you spend that time following up with your current and future customers, right? So that's what we recommend, and a lot of people are having really good success with that structure.
Will you help me put together an information package for my next trade show if I join?
Marie, yes, we would be delighted to help you put together an information package for your next trade show during your office hour. So you can just say that's your objective for your office hour. You could send us some of the material that you're using now, and we'd go through that with you and figure out what you can use that you already have, what you might need to develop that's new, and help you with that objective. And that could be our project for your office hour.
Let's see. What are the books in a book club?
Okay. The books, we have had really good books this year. We started with the 80/20 Marketing and Sales by Perry Marshall. And that one was probably one of my favorites, even though I'm not a math person. Basically, the premise of that is that 20% of the effort that you put out gets you 80% of the benefit. And that is true of marketing like you wouldn't believe. So that one was a good one. In February, we did Trust-Based Marketing by Matt Zagula, which was also a really good book because we were discussing building credibility and closing sales during that month. And credibility is a huge issue in aviation. In March, we did The Referral Engine by John Jantsch, talking about referrals, resells, recaptures, and so on. And he's got some really good ways of systematizing referrals in that book, and that was I think that was a really good way of a lot of companies leave a lot of money on the table by not doing that right. In April, we did Brand Building by Direct Response because we were doing our brand workshop, so that fit in really well. In May, we were doing Visual Storytelling, so we did the Art of Impact by Pam Hendrickson, and we actually just had our book club conversation about that on Monday. The next one that we're doing is Getting the Most Out of Trade Shows by Steve Miller, and we'll be talking about that in the group on July 11th, and that will be broadcast as our podcast. And when people participate in those book club conversations, they get links from our blog, they get some visibility on our podcast, and so on. So that's a nice way for our members to get some visibility.
Which is all part of the deal that we help them market.
Exactly. So good question. Books that are coming up. Let's see. Power Prospecting, Business to Business by Patrick Henry Hansen in August, because we're talking about qualifying prospects. In September, Even a Geek Can Speak. We're going to be talking about in-person sales presentations and public speaking. And that's Joey Asher. And that's actually really good timing because our group of 4, they are, I'm going to say, really engineering-heavy guys that are going to be speaking at NBAA, 4 of our Insider Circle members. And that's going to be really exciting. So that's good timing for them. In October, we're going to be talking about predictive analytics because we're talking about statistics, measurements, and ROI. In November, Marketing to the Affluent by Kennedy and Nanton. You read that book. I think that was, what did you think of it?
It's an interesting take.
Marketing to the Affluent. Yeah, it's not what you think. They are not snobs.
No.
Right, so a lot of surprises in that book. And in December, we have a TBD, so we'll do a member's choice in December, and then we'll also do a survey to find out what books we want to talk about in 2017 using a survey.
And so far, our last question is, how long should you keep following up after a trade show?
Good question, Marie. We belong to a marketing mastermind group, and I think it was Dave D. says that you should follow up until they buy or till they die. Or until they become unqualified. So, if they retire or if they switch jobs and they go into real estate or something.
But that doesn't mean you hit them every day.
No, that just means that you keep them on and we have a low intensity marketing list that all they get is our printed newsletter and our emails. And that really doesn't cost us very much more for each additional person on that list. But as long as a person is qualified, we keep them on that list forever, unless there's a reason that we find out that they're, out of the business or something like that. Cool. All right. Well, we got 3 minutes left. If we have any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And if not, we'll sign off early and give you guys some time back.
Yeah, like 2.5 minutes.
Like 2.5 minutes. Okay. Thank you guys for a very, very interactive session. We had a really good time, didn't we, John?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And you guys really make this worth doing and make it fun. And what I'd really recommend that you do is that you print out that checklist and hang it on your wall, because that will really remind you of what you need to be doing and those 3 things that you should do to make your next trade show your most profitable ever. All right, we've got one more question. How many office hours do you get monthly for $279? You get 1 office hour a month.
And we don't cut you off exactly to the minute. If we're in a conversation, we'll make sure we finish it.
Exactly. So 1 office hour a month, and you can of course purchase additional office hours for $279, which is a huge discount over what we traditionally do personal consulting for. It's the cheapest way to get consulting from us. All right. So thank you for joining us. We're really happy you were here. And once again, join before June 17th. Thank you very much if you joined while you were on the webinar. And if you joined before the 17th, you get that $500 gift certificate. If you join after the 17th, that gift certificate is going to get significantly smaller. So we have to create urgency. That's one of the things we teach. We practice what we preach. So make sure you join by Friday.
And you're a poet.
Absolutely. You didn't know it. All right. So have a great afternoon. We'll talk to you next month.
Ciao.